There is a story, a very famous story, about a young boy that on his way to school, he noticed that there was a trickle coming through a dike. And not wanting to get in trouble, he knew that if he did not get to school on time, he would be in a lot of trouble. So what he did was he stuck his finger into the hole in the dike and he stopped water from the sea from coming in. And he stayed there the whole day until people passing by noticed him. And when they noticed him, they recognized what he had done, and then they called villagers who came by and stopped the dike, the hole in the dam. The reason why I tell that story is because what starts out as a trickle sometimes ends up being a stream. And then what ends up being a stream sometimes can become a torrent, and a torrent then eventually becomes a flood, and many people suffer as a result of it. Today it's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce someone who I consider a dike stopper. Someone who, through personal sacrifice and through his own desires to see a city that's better, a community that's better, has decided to give of himself to all of us and to our community. This person he has solid public sector experience as well as solid private sector experience. He has worked for organizations like KPMG as well as the Gartner Group, but he's also done a lot of things in the public domain where he has always worked with groups like the Village of Pelham and the City of Mount Vernon to give the City of Mount Vernon value increase of upwards of 300%. He is someone who stands for justice, working with people like the late Ozzie Davis, and he's also someone who's fought for the community as well as someone who's accomplished great things. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce someone who is, as I said, a dike stopper, someone who understands the importance of trying to get things right at the root and making sure that what are trickles does not end up becoming floods. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Derickson K. Lawrence.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have a cheerleader here, and it's good to know that. Looks like I have several cheerleaders. I thank you for the time that you spent waiting. We had an unfortunate accident just coming here, so it delayed us a bit. But I've got to say to you, first let me thank both inspirational speakers here, Elon Sylvester and, well, it's Reverend Elon Sylvester, is that correct?
Yes.
And Reverend Hugh Marriott. They represent the new generation of leadership, of clergy here in Mount Vernon and the region, and we thank them for their inspirational words. And certainly Reverend Hugh Marriott for your generous remarks. We thank you. Appreciate it so much. You know, you don't have to stand on what is sacred ground or where we have a church setting to know that it's not about us. It's truly about Him. And I feel blessed to get up this morning. I feel blessed to be here today. Despite the issues that we had a few moments ago, I'm blessed to have my family with me. My wife is not typically around for events like these because she travels a lot, and she just came back last night from Asia. I know that my son is glad to see her because he had enough of KFC for the last 2.5 weeks. But, you know, I am blessed. I am blessed to have a family here and a lot of friends and supporters, and I thank you for being here today. When I think about serving the one and only, I seek to serve Him, and through Him, I also seek to serve you. In doing so, I look to Him for strength, vision, and direction. That's where it all comes from. And so, today I stand before you humbled, yet proud to announce my candidacy for the U.S. House of Representatives for the 16th Congressional District of the United States of America. You know, this is not an easy step to take. You really need to have not only inspirational support, but physical support of people around you. And I want to take the time to thank those who put together the press conference in setting this up. I know it wasn't easy to do so without power and just getting things organized. We have another set of a team that is setting up at our next location. We're going to 28 East 1st Street to get our petitions done. So I want to thank the members of the team who have been working on this. So we thank you for that. Let us talk about why we're here and why this place, and specifically what's driving this campaign. We actually stand on what I call hallowed ground. And the reason I call this hallowed ground is because about 283 years ago, right here on these grounds, on the top of this mound, over 500 people gathered for what was the first recorded election in our nation's history. It happened right here on this ground. And at the time, their focus was really about raising issues that were important to them. So the first set of issues really were issues that led to what we call freedom of press and freedom of religion. Those are issues then that made it into our Constitution, and that, of course, we cherish and hold dear today. It was also a time that, as they struggled with those issues, they were challenging what was at the time the establishment. That was their challenge. Was to challenge the status quo, challenge the establishment. And I would say to you that there are some historical parallels that we have today. When we look at this race, we are, of course, challenging the establishment. We're going to go to the voters of this district as our base to move forward on the issues. So those were important times. That's what we want to look at as a pivotal point going forward. When we look at this race, what's important here? There are a couple of themes that I want to go through that's going to resonate with the voters of the district. I believe that a congressman's role is to really not only work from a legislative standpoint and provide the oversight, executive oversight, which is what everybody knows about. But I also think he needs to be present and be focused in our district. I think we have a case where when shaking hands with our president as a photo op becomes a badge, becomes a brand, I think you've lost sight of what's important to the people of this district and to the nation. And so, in going forward, there are a couple of themes that we have to look at. Number one, I'm going to look at, we take this grounds for a moment. And I noticed that this is a historic site. This is, in fact, where so much history has gone by. But this place is closed today. Why would this place be closed on a day, on a Saturday? I believe it's closed 2 or 3 Saturdays a month. It's a minor issue, but it is something that I think federal dollars can go to bring forward. But let's talk about more important issues. I'm going to cite 2 of them. One is economics, and then I'll go to what we call mass incarceration, because I don't want to keep you long, but I want to make these points. When we look at the issue of economics, we know that our president has done well in coming back from the recession, 2007, and brought millions of jobs back. He's taking us from what was double-digit inflation to what is now 4.9%. But I'll say to you that the flip side of this economic coin paints a very different picture, because that number does not include those people who have stopped looking for work. Those are the underemployed. It doesn't include those people who are not in school on a training program looking for work. And it doesn't include those people who have part-time jobs looking for full-time jobs. And that's a problem. It's a problem because it feeds in what the growing inequality. It's a problem because it feeds into growth rate stagnation. And so we have to ask ourselves the question of how do we change the prospects for upward mobility for the underserved communities? That's a challenge in our local community. That's an issue that needs to be talked about. That's a local issue. It's a regional issue that I believe the congressman, anyone within Congress, ought to be looking at. And so I will share with you what the problem, I shared with you what the problem is. I'll share with you what the solution is. In short, there are a number of things we have done recently for that. We recently engaged WCC, the Westchester Community College, and our local institutions, the Chambers of Commerce, to launch what was MYB Tank, Mount Vernon, Yonkers, and the Bronx. And we were able to get at least 11 early stage businesses to participate in this process. What was important here is that we need small businesses to grow, graduate, and flourish, because that's going to form the backbone of our regional economy to allow it to grow. These are important milestones. This is sort of a prototype, but we believe as a congressperson, this is something that we can take to other parts of our community to help build what will be an ecosystem to help build the economy of our region. So that's one issue. The second issue I'd raise that's of significance to us would be mass incarceration. That's an important issue to talk about today, because when you think about it, we as a nation make up 5% of the world population, but 26% of the world's prison population. When we look at the numbers from as recent as 2010, 90% of our federal prisons are made up of drug users. And so the issue for us here is we look at the expense of incarcerating that many people who are men and women of color. The expense of that is about $80 billion a year. We think about the cost of educating someone who has an alternative to that. And that's about $40,000 to $50,000 a year versus the $60,000 a year to incarcerate them. These are numbers that are significant in terms of what we can do from a federal standpoint. Now, the reason that's important and the reason I want to sort of hop on that is because statewide we see our institutions, our governor has begun rolling back the federal drug laws. We see on the national stage presidential candidates making that an issue. But our congressperson, in particular, who voted for these laws in the 2000 eras, have not come forward and at least mentioned that these are issues that he'd be working on to change back. As your congressperson, I'll make that a priority in terms of rolling back some of those laws. So I think those are important steps for us. I'm going to try to wrap up for a moment, because I know it's getting cold. What's important here as we go forward is that this is really a step where we engage our community to know that they can do something a little different than what has been done before. I have a 33-year-old, a 26-year-old, started over again with a 5-year-old. And as I work with him now with sight words, I get the true sense of the shared responsibility we all have as parents, as stewardship, or playing, well, really stewards of what we've inherited as a nation and what we had as a moral obligation to improve it for the next generation. Those are important issues for us. And as I push over to the ripe age of 60, I get the sense of that urgent moment. The urgency is actually now to change some of those things. And so I stand before you in taking this step to bring the needed change in leadership, to voice the issues of concern in a way that we can make a difference. In the next few months and the next few days, our focus will be getting on the ballots. I'm going to need your help. If you fight for me, I'm going to fight for you in terms of the issues that matter to you. And getting on the ballot will take us one step closer to lifting the economy of the region. Getting on the ballot will take us one step closer to standing up for justice and reforms in the criminal justice region. Getting on the ballot will bring us one step closer to giving us the kind of leadership that we actually deserve. On the ballot, one step closer. Just one step closer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody has questions, but I'll take questions for the folks who are out today. See, everybody's cool.
Yeah, I'm Dave Hockhauser. I live in the 16th Congressional, and
Dave?
Dave Hockhauser. I live in the 16th Congressional, and I'm interested. You have no legislative experience at all. You've never served an elective office. Why would you go from all the way up to the top to start?
Actually, that's a very good question, Dave. The answer to that is pretty simple. Our nation is looking for leadership today from a variety of different disciplines, quite frankly. If you look at the presidential election, you will see that there's a deep disdain for this same old politician, the professional class. And I have come from a business perspective as an entrepreneur. I run two businesses that have national footprints and one with a global footprint. We have to look for leadership in different disciplines, and I know you can acknowledge that you can be effective and not having to serve in those local positions that you've just mentioned. I think it's important to have a different perspective if you're going to find the solutions that you need to drive this district forward. And I believe I have, in both my private sector experience and the public sector experience that was just mentioned earlier, and I'll tell you what those are in a few moments. Number one, I've served as the co-vice chair of the Westchester County Charter Revision Commission, and there we've had a clear sense of the needs and priorities of the county, and so those are key experiences to have. In terms of legislative experience, I'm going to be very specific about that. I was asked by the previous mayor to work with Pelham Manor on a particular initiative that had to do with the Eastchester Creek Revitalization Community. This was actually this region, actually. And not only did I increase the value of the deal that was put before me by 300%, I actually wrote the intermunicipal agreement. And in addition to writing that agreement, I had to write the legislation that passed in the Senate and was stuck in the assembly, and led the initiative locally for our what we call home rule deal. So yes, those are relevant experience as it relates to working with not only bringing diverse groups together, but actually bringing and supporting legislation, and clearly one example passing, of course, the state senate. So there are numerous examples of those. You can be an effective leader as a citizen without having to serve in an elective office. So I just wanted to bring that to you. Okay, if there are no more questions, we thank you for coming. We have hot foods and libation, all the great things at our next stop. It's 28 East 1st Street. We'd ask you to all join us.